A 24-year-old mukbanger just died after her stomach ripped open on live stream. This was also a 10-hour live stream. It was very lengthy and she was consuming a lot of things, cake, chicken, everything, you name it. She was a Chinese woman by the name of Pan Xiaoting. She died last week from a stomach rupture on the live stream after consuming over 15 pounds of food. The autopsy report suggested that her stomach literally ripped open because there was a lot of undigested food in there and the stomach was distended. This was not the first incident either. She was hospitalized a few months ago for her stomach bleeding for the same thing, eating a lot of food on a live stream. And it's sad too, because even her parents are begging her to stop. But a lot of mukbang culture has become a little toxic. The more outrageous it gets, the more viewers, these people get and the more money they make. It kind of incentivizes them to destroy their bodies in this way. I really feel for this young girl and her family. It's just so sad. Hopefully other mukbangers see this and they take this as like a warning. Just be more careful. Your stomach can literally rupture. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. As always, these videos are for informational purposes only.
Alafia! My name is Oshun. On this channel, we uncover the creepiest, most unusual haunted TikToks the internet has to offer for entertainment purposes. Y'all are my soul tribe. Tribe is with a Y because the Y is for you, and that's because I love you so freaking much. I appreciate you. I do not take your time for granted, honey. Please like, comment, and subscribe to the Soul Tribe for your weekly dose of supernatural, coming to you every Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursdays. Now, let's get to this next video.
The voicemail you're about to hear was sent on December 14th of 2022 to a girl named Sasha. Sasha lives with 3 friends from her sorority in a house that they rent in Syracuse, New York. Sasha met a seemingly nice and normal guy while out in town with her friends. They spoke very briefly and she gave him her number. The man's name was Jeremy, and he doesn't go to school at Syracuse University like Sasha does. Rather, he was a local in the area. The two arranged to go on a date for drinks and dinner at a nearby bar. According to Sasha, the date didn't go well in her opinion, as he radiated unusual vibes and she thought he was weird. She split the bill with him because she knew there wouldn't be a second date and she wanted to do the right thing. He dropped her back home after the date and sent 3 texts later that night about how much fun he had and how much he liked her. It added to the discomfort for Sasha. Instead of responding, she hearted one of the messages, but the text continued on and on every single day, until the point that she decided to block him. Unfortunately, this was not the end. On the night of December 14th at 2:15 a.m., when everyone in the house was asleep, Sasha got an anonymous call that left this voicemail.
Sasha, it's Jeremy. I don't know why you can't answer any of my calls or texts. I think it's pretty fucked up. You shouldn't leave your windows open, by the way. I'm whispering because I don't want to wake you, but I left you a surprise on the kitchen table.
At the end of the call, you can hear a door shutting. This was the front door of Sasha's rental house, and the sound of the door closing alerted one of her housemates, who woke up everyone in the house to ask who just shut the front door. All 4 girls were in the house though, and it was none of them. This was when Sasha noticed the voicemail and listened to it with her housemates. What Jeremy left on the kitchen table was a stuffed animal turtle, Sasha's favorite animal, which she mentioned on her date with Jeremy. Alongside it was a Christmas card that simply said "Merry Christmas" from Jeremy. This prompted the girls to call the police, and Sasha showed the police officer the texts and the voicemail. The voicemail was self-incriminating enough, and the non-stop text from Jeremy backed up the story. It was enough for the police to find Jeremy and charge him for breaking and entering and stalking. He only did a week in jail and was sentenced to community service and multiple fines. It's been a month and a half now, and Sasha has not heard from Jeremy.
In 2002, Christopher Tompkins was working as a surveyor, and he was assigned to this 4-man survey crew that was working in Harris County, Georgia. And they were walking along this road spaced about 50 feet apart, all 4 of them. And Chris was the last one in line. And the third one in line would later tell investigators and police that as they were walking along the road, he would periodically turn around to just, for a quick second, make sure Chris was still there. And as they're walking along with no sound or any indication that anything's happened, he turned around, saw Chris, kept walking. A few minutes later, turned around, and Chris is gone. The third guy hails the other two, and they go, and they're like, where did Chris go? They're looking down the road, like maybe he stopped, maybe he stepped off the trail, but they can't see him. And they go back they start walking down the road towards where he would have been, and they find on the ground a pile of loose change and some of his tools that would have been in his pockets. And then they see one of his boots stuck in the barbed wire, because there's a little barbed wire fence that was running the length of this road. One of his boots was stuck in the barbed wire, and there was nothing else. They searched the area, they're looking everywhere, there's no sign of him, and it didn't make any sense to the people in the survey crew, especially the guy who was third in line. He was like, I literally saw him a minute ago, and there's no way he could have gotten away without me hearing or seeing some indication of where he was. But there was no sign of him, and he was gone. So after this huge investigation, they don't find any sign of him, and that's it. They're just like, yeah, he's gone. They did find, 9 months later, they found his other boot near a swamp 900 yards away, but it didn't provide any more clarity into what happened to him. However, if you look at the pile of loose change and things that were in his pockets that were on the road, it indicates that at some point he may have been turned upside down. And if you think about the entirety of all of these strange stories where the idea being someone could be hunting humans, just picture in your head Chris Tompkins walking along and something flipping him upside down, dumping the contents out, and then being gone in a matter of a minute where no one can see where they went. These 5 stories are just a fraction of the literal thousands of others that are covered in the Missing 411 series. And while many people believe that all of the cases in Missing 411 and any others that ultimately are considered strange inside of these national parks have a rational explanation, even if we don't know what it is. Whereas another group believes that this Missing 411 phenomenon is an indication that something is hunting humans in the national parks across North America.
I would have to agree. Turned upside down, that's what it sounds about right to me. And what is it called? Abduction.
Sounds totally made up until you listen to the police report. In the early 90s, a teenage girl started to see these shadowy figures that would come into her room at night and crawl all around her room and even grab at her legs. At the same time, her health began to rapidly deteriorate, which ultimately led to her death, which doctors never understood. A few days after her death, her sister woke up to a whistling sound and saw a creature crawling around her room with no face. The same night, her mom was ripped out of bed by someone. The father calls the police, who come over, they search the house, they don't find anything, it's all quiet. As they're about to leave, they hear something. Horrifying screams coming out of the bedroom. They run inside, no one's in there, but there are these huge gashes on the wall that were not there before. The police get out of there. In the police report that was filed immediately after this house call, the chief inspector and the 3 officers that were there that night swear they saw and heard the same things as the family, which means the police officially believed that the house was haunted.
I was told a really disturbing story recently, and it's taken me a little while to be able to put this video together because, yeah, it's quite frightening, but I do feel like it could raise awareness and potentially help someone stay out of danger. So if you use Tinder, this video is for you. So this actually happened to a friend of a friend of a friend. So I don't actually know the person. So if this is you, I do apologise, but I was told this story and I do think that sharing it could help, potentially help someone. So, a lady, she was speaking to a guy on Tinder. They were talking for a couple of weeks. They hadn't FaceTimed, but they were talking on the phone and WhatsApping constantly. They arranged to meet at a bar in London, a bar that he chose. On the day, she said she felt a little bit uneasy, so she decided to ask her best friend to come with her. So her best friend went into the bar first, where she was meeting this guy. Let's call him Adam, and we'll call her Jane. So Jane's friend has gone into the bar about 5 minutes before Jane did. Jane then goes in, going in to meet Adam. So Adam's not there when Jane gets there. Jane's waiting there for about 10 minutes. Her friend is in eyesight at the bar. So she's just waiting at the bar, just making sure everything's okay. Adam then walks in. Now she notices straight away that Adam's pictures had definitely been enhanced. He looked different to the pictures what she'd shown. Now he had a Essex accent. So he sat down, they've had a little chat, they're talking, they're getting on fine. Jane then says, right, I'm just going to pop to the loo, because they were talking about going to another bar. So she gets up, goes to the toilet. Her friend is watching. As her friend watches, she notices Adam put something in to Jane's drink. She then runs towards the toilet to let Jane know. When she told Jane this, Jane said something does feel off. There's something about this person. It's giving me, it's just not sitting right with me. Something's not sitting right. So Jane's friend then says, fine, let's leave. They leave, walk towards the exit of the bar. As they're leaving, there is a large van outside with 5 men. They're all looking at the girls, looking at them in a strange way, as if they recognise Jane. All of a sudden, Adam comes running out of the bar towards them. Jane and her friend start to run towards the main road, and Adam starts to shout at them in a different language. They said they're not sure what language it was, but the men that he was with outside, they looked Eastern European. So they all then were together, and Jane believes that they were trying to kidnap her, or trying to drug her and get her into that van. Now, this story gave me chills. And I've actually tried to film this video about 4 times now and struggled, because imagine that. Like, I won't even want to imagine that. So please, guys, if you are using online dating, there are so many different things that can go wrong. You don't know who these people are, so please always make sure you FaceTime them. You know exactly who you're talking to. Check if they have social media. Just be really, really wary. Meet in a place that you know, that you've chosen, somewhere there's lots of people around. And just be very, very, very careful and safe.
Facts. Very safe, very careful, especially being single out here in these streets, honey. It's crazy. Like I always say, keep you a weapon.
This is the scary story about the lunch lady. There was a lunch lady named Judy, and everybody in the school loved her. But they loved her food even more. Every single day they would all run to the lunchroom just to eat her delicious food. But one day, a young boy in 7th grade noticed something extremely strange. In the back of the kitchen, he saw a mysterious door he never seen before. And he's been buying lunch every single day for a year straight. He then went to the principal's office and told him what he saw. The principal then made his way down to the lunchroom and asked Judy about the door. She played dumb for a couple minutes, but eventually ended up showing him. And what he saw inside made him freeze in complete horror. Inside were multiple children's dead bodies, completely cut up and strung up on the wall like animals. Judy then looked at the principal with a smile on her face and said, "How do you think my food tastes so good?" This is the reason why. Judy was then arrested and fired. Judy is now serving 105 years in prison. But the crazy part is, how did this school allow a lunch lady to kill all these students and then sell their meat as lunch food?
This story is definitely one of the creepiest ones I've read since starting Spooky Scary Storytime. It's about this girl and her twin sister and how they've always shared this connection, which changed after her sister got what she thinks is a haunted item from an estate sale. So the girl who emailed me, we're going to call her Amy, did not want her real name to be used, and her identical twin sister is named as Becky. Becky is obviously not her real name. She didn't want hers to be used either for privacy reasons. I get it. But these girls are 26 now. They grew up somewhere in Michigan with a single mother. Dad was never really in the picture, and they moved around a lot, like hopped around apartment to apartment. Their mom was always working, so they were each other's best friends growing up. And then she said that they had like the twin bond, which I am not a twin, I don't know, but I've heard it's a real thing. She said basically since they were small, they could finish each other's sentences. They always knew what the other one was feeling or thinking. Twins, weigh in on this one. Maybe you guys can shed some light on if this is a real thing or not. And because they changed schools and neighborhoods so often, they really grew to rely on each other, and they were really each other's best friend. When the girls were 23, their mother sadly passed away from cancer, and they moved in with their grandmother, who lived in a small 2-bed, 1-bath house not far from where they were living with their mother. Their grandmother lives till they're 25, so last year she passes away. Up till their grandmother passed away, they were sharing a bedroom. When their grandmother passed away, they inherited the house, and Amy, who emailed me, moves into her grandmother's bedroom. So now they have their own bedrooms for the first time in their life, and they are excited about it. She said although they were still best friends, still hung out, did everything together, had the same friends, they obviously weren't the same person. Like, they had their own interests. For example, Becky, Amy's twin, was really into like Pilates. She was very active, very athletic. And then Amy was more into like art and music and just books and a quieter life. She said of the two of them, Becky was like the more outgoing. After their grandmother passed away, they also inherit like a little bit of money, like not enough to be life-changing or anything. Both of them are actually still working at the same job as baristas, but it's enough for them to splurge on some things that they wanted and also redecorate the house. And they were so ecstatic to do this because they had never had like a place of their own, really. Like, they never had money, and they were keeping the house in both of their names. So they were like, you know what, we're going to spend some of this money to make the house like comfortable and kind of just like cute, like we've always wanted. So they sell some of their grandmother's things, and they make all this space in the house for like the new things they're going to bring in. They have all these like vision boards of what they want the house to look like, but they obviously have to do it in a smart way because they don't have that much money to burn. So they had grown up thrifting, not because out of like a hobby, but because their mom never had money. So they were always like wearing hand-me-downs. They were always having like mismatched used furniture, but they're like, we can do this in a smart way. Like, we know where to look. And Amy described their vision for the house as like bold maximalist, you know, like bright colors, bold patterns, whatever. They go to a bunch of thrift stores in their town. They find some pieces that fit. Becky's like, we should also check estate sales. And Amy's like, bet. They get online. They find a website that lists all the estate sales in their areas, and they plan this whole weekend of going to estate sales. The first two they go to, they find a chair and a mirror, but that's it. But they're really excited for the third estate sale, which is at this huge estate mansion. They pull up. There's already a ton of cars, a ton of people. Apparently it was like a predominant family. The last person in that family had passed away, and it was like all of their leftover things. So they walk in and look around. It's all this really nice solid wood furniture, a lot of really expensive art, and they look at each other. They're like, there's no way we're going to be able to afford this. There's one lady running the show. She's like running around frantic, talking to all the people there, looking at everything. They find this set of like bright yellow couches that they wanted, and they ask the lady, and she tells them it's like $12,000. So they're like, yeah, no. They were walking around for a little bit. Amy said what really stood out to her about all of the art was that it was very like evil looking. There were a lot of images of what appeared to be like demons coming up from the earth, and like children with grimaces on their faces, and then like saints in cloaks. She said just like not a good vibe for the art. So they can't afford anything anyway. She tells Becky like, hey, we should leave. Becky's like, all right, well, let me just like look in the bedroom real quick. I just want to see if there's anything like little, like maybe we can find something like cool, like a little trinket or something. So she walks in one of the bedrooms, and there's like a jewelry box, and with all the contents laid out. They're looking over the jewelry. It's all very gaudy, like neither of their styles. And there's a little sign that says inquire for pricing on individual pieces. So Becky's eyes come across this little Victorian brooch. This is not the exact brooch, but this is the picture that Amy sent me and said it looked like this. It was a black silhouette with a white woman in the foreground. She said the one Becky found, though, seemed to be different in that the woman seemed to be like grimacing. Becky picks it up and shows Amy. She's like, oh my God, I have to have this. And Amy rolls her eyes. She's like, you're not going to be able to afford it. And Becky's like, I'm just going to ask how much it is. She brings it downstairs. She shows the lady running the show, who's still like frantically running around talking to all the buyers. And she's like, hey, how much is this? I found it upstairs by the jewelry. And the lady like can't be bothered. She's like, just take it. So Becky's like, bet. She like doesn't think twice. She's like, it's mine. And Amy's like, I can't believe you just got that for free. And she's like, yeah, like I manifested it. So they leave. Amy's driving home. Becky's looking at the brooch. She's like admiring it. She's trying to look up if it's worth anything. And she's just like, I feel drawn to it. Like, I feel like it was meant for me. Amy said she didn't think it was that cool, and she like did not understand her excitement. They get home, whatever. Amy's boyfriend comes over that night. Okay, so he's sleeping in her bed with her. They go to sleep. She has a nightmare while she's sleeping about the brooch. She said she was looking at it on Amy's dresser, and she picked it up, and the woman in the brooch turned to look at her and scowled at her. And then she started talking, but she said she can't remember what she said in the dream, but she remembers it was a warning. So she said she thought she woke up from this dream. She sits up in bed. She wakes up her boyfriend, and her boyfriend turns over, but his face is the woman's face. And then she really woke up. So she had like a dream within a dream. She's obviously unsettled by this nightmare. So she tries to fall back asleep, but she said when she closed her eyes, she just saw all the demons and like the grimacing children from the painting she saw at the estate sale. So she doesn't really sleep well that night. She wakes up. Becky's already awake because she's going into a shift at work. She's dressed and she has attached the brooch to like a strap on the purse that she always wore. She bounces out the door. She's like, I'll see you after work, and she leaves. Amy's out that day, but she goes out to run errands and like hang out with her boyfriend. She's sitting on the couch at her boyfriend's house when she gets a text from her friend, and her friend says, hey, are you too good for me now? LOL. Amy texts her back and she just sends her like a question mark. And her friend's like, oh yeah, I said hey to you at the park and you ignored me. Amy's like, I wasn't at the park. And her friend texts her back and she's like, oh, it must have been Becky. But Becky's supposed to be at work. So Amy texts Becky and she's like, hey, did you get cut early? And Amy texts her back after like 20 minutes and she's like, no, I'm still here. It's so slow. Amy said it was pretty common for them to be mistaken in public for each other because they were identical. So Amy's just like, okay, weird. Like, must have been somebody else who looked like us. She doesn't think too much into it. That night, though, she has the same dream about the woman with the brooch. And this time she has a warning that Amy actually remembers. It's the same thing. She's looking at Becky's dresser. She sees the brooch. The woman in the brooch turns to look at her and says, you have what's mine. Give it back. And again, she wakes up from this dream and she's just like, what is going on? So the next day she tells Becky, like, your brooch is giving me nightmares. I don't know why it creeps me out, but like I have these dreams about it. Becky jokes with her. She's like, oh, you're just jealous that I have it and you didn't get it. And Amy's like, no, I honestly don't even really like it. Like, I just don't like it. It's creepy. And Becky gives her this little lecture, half joking, about how Amy's the one that likes art. She should appreciate different art and jewelry and styles from different decades. Becky doesn't get rid of the brooch. Weeks go on. She continues having this dream. And then one night she wakes up to Bella, which is their dog, which they share, and Bella is howling. She said although they shared Bella, Bella was more Becky's dog. She just liked her more. She always slept with her. But that night, Bella comes running out of Becky's room and she jumps in the bed with Amy and her boyfriend. She was shaking and whimpering and she really had never displayed any type of anxiety before. So Amy did her best to calm her down and she goes back to sleep. After that night, Bella continued sleeping with Amy, like refused to go near Becky, and Becky couldn't figure out what was wrong and her feelings were kind of hurt by it. She's like, she's my dog. Things got creepier when this guy that Becky had been seeing had one of her sweatshirts that she left at his house, and he texted them in a group chat and was like, hey, I'm gonna bring over Becky's sweater. Both of the girls were out, so they text him like, hey, we're not home, just leave it at the doorstep. Both of the girls were working at the coffee shop when he texted them this. He's like, okay, cool, I'll just leave it on the doorstep. Later that night, Becky gets off work. She texts her boyfriend. He's like, I thought you were mad at me. And she's like, why would I be mad at you? And he's like, when I saw you earlier, you seemed upset. She's like, what are you talking about? So she calls him, and Amy said the phone call was in front of her, like he was on speakerphone, so she heard it. But basically he said that when he came over to their house to drop off the sweater, Becky answered the door and she took the sweater from him, but she didn't say anything to him. Apparently he was like, oh, you're off work early, like let's hang. And she just like ignored him, like was so cold, took the sweater and went inside. Becky's like, I've been at work all day. And he's like, cool, was it Amy? And she's like, no, she's been at work all day with me. So they get home and the sweater is on the couch. So they're like, what the F is going on? Because nobody else lived there. He did not have a key to their place. They ruled out the fact that he was like playing some elaborate joke on them. The whole thing was really rubbed them the wrong way. They go out that night and they buy some Ring cameras. Not long after that happens, Becky's at work one day. Amy's at the house by herself. She's sleeping in because she said sometimes they work together, but usually Becky worked in the mornings and Amy worked at night. She's in her bed with the dog scrolling on her phone. She had just woken up and she said she saw Becky walk past her door, which was like half cracked open, into the bathroom. This was like 2 hours after Becky was supposed to leave for work. So she calls her. She's like, Becky, why are you here? Becky doesn't say anything. So she gets up, she walks out of the hall, and she said directly to the right of her bedroom door was the bathroom. She looks in the bathroom and Becky's not in there. She says 100% she saw Becky walk past the door. It wasn't like a shadow, it was Becky. She's obviously freaked out. She calls Becky. Becky's at work, so she doesn't answer. She texts her back. She's like, what's up? I'm at work. You know this. Amy's like, did you come home? And Becky's like, no, I'm at work. I've been here for like 2 hours. So she's too freaked out. She leaves. She goes to her boyfriend's house. She comes home later that night when Becky's also home. Becky's out in the living room watching TV. Amy is sitting on the floor in her bedroom, like with the mirror, doing her makeup, and she's on FaceTime with one of her friends. She's telling her about this experience she had. Her friend cuts her off at one point and she goes, oh, hey, Becky. Amy looks in the phone in the little FaceTime window and she sees Becky standing behind her. So she turns around and nobody's there. And her friend's like, rude, she could have said hi. And she's like, she wasn't there. So Amy runs out in the living room and Becky is still sitting on the couch watching TV. She's like, were you just in my room? And Becky's like, no, I've been watching the show. She said this continues to happen. She continues seeing Becky where she's not. She has no idea what's going on. And it's been 8 months since this has started happening. The girls say they have researched this to the end of the earth and they cannot find anything. Amy said she's convinced it was the brooch because it started when the brooch was brought in the house. She convinced Becky to stop wearing the brooch. She still has it. She said she doesn't know what to do with it, but she doesn't wear it anymore. She said she sent me this story because she wants to know if anyone's had a similar experience, and if so, what should she do? What should they do? She said also now her and Becky are arguing all the time. Becky actually doesn't know that she sent me this story, which is another reason she wanted their names changed. Becky's whole personality has just gotten this really dark, heavy, like attitude. She also said that she will continue giving me updates about this story. So this will be just like an ongoing one. In February, I'm doing a spooky, scary dating story time series. So if you have a creepy ex-stalker, boyfriend, first date story, send those to me. And I'll keep adding these stories to this playlist.
That was long as hell, but that was a good story. It turned out to be a really good story. And the twins, that's crazy. They lost all the twin bond and she became real dark and evil. What do y'all think about that? Let me know in the comments.
Okay, so what I'm about to tell you guys sounds completely unreal, and I know that you guys will probably try to pick it apart, but I have like different sources that can tell you like, no, it's something happening. I'm only doing this because I want to find out if people in our apartment complex are having issues and like things happening, or is it just our hallway that has weird stuff happening. But yeah, I've even had people say like, people who've never stepped foot in my apartment was like, hey, you need to get out of your apartment. Like, it's been weird, but here we go. Just stay with me. I'm going to tell you how we got here, but it's going to get very scary. It's going to get very dark, and it's going to get very weird. But I have to take you, like, through step by step on how we got here. Okay, so last night I had this crazy dream about me buying a brand new TV. Even though I have all these TVs in my apartment, for whatever reason, I decided to buy a brand new TV.
You want to know what the horse did to me? Hello, I'm Laura Morales, and this is my story. I'm 23 years old, living with my family in a rural area in the United States where I grew up surrounded by horses. One sunny afternoon, I decided to take a stroll through the meadow on horseback. As I rode across the grassy field, the horse turned towards me, as if sensing my mood. Approaching slowly, I was astonished to find it lowering its head, embracing me with a warm gesture. It was an incredible moment of communication and comfort between me and the horse. Standing there, I could feel its warmth and breath, as if it completely understood my emotions, providing me with an unprecedented sense of calm and fulfillment. However, everything took a turn for the worse in that moment. I sensed its excitement, and suddenly, my world turned upside down. I felt a massive object approaching me, but before I could react, it was already too late. Fortunately, the entire ordeal lasted only about 15 seconds. In that moment, I knew I had to do something different to save my life. Stay tuned for the second part.
She's crying. She's inside by herself.
Okay, honey. How old is your child?
She's 2. She's only 2.
Gosh.
I'm coming, baby. Okay? I'm coming.
A ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
Back in 2012, my family experienced a series of events that changed our lives forever. We moved into the main street house and only were able to live in it for about a year because of all of the paranormal activity. I've tried telling these stories many times before, but because it's 6 years of consistent hauntings, I find it really hard to find a way to categorize everything and keep the story flowing. Behind me is the list of just one section. This would be one house's experiences, and there's also pre-stories leading up to these events. This is part 1 and the events that led up to moving into the main street house. I do believe that my family had some sort of negative entity, possibly even a demonic entity attached to it, and be very possessive over it, because we had many years of hauntings in every house that we lived in. And by the 4th house, I realized it's not the house, it's us. Things just seemed to progress and spiral as we got older. As more negative came into our house, the stronger these presences got. We would always hear mimics. There was always like some sort of strange tragedy that nobody could explain. Around 2011, my ex-boyfriend's grandfather passed away. We went to his memorial a year later. All the aunts brought these really beautiful, fresh cut flowers. They like moved all the furniture out of the living room so the whole family can come. They have chairs set up with grandpa's picture in the front and all these beautiful, fresh cut flowers. At the end of the prayer, there was a little flicker to the candles. Everybody got kind of cold, but it wasn't cold. it just had this chill feeling. And that's when we noticed that all of the vases were empty. The flowers were still inside, obviously, but the water was gone. So for all the water to be gone, I've never seen a vase empty. Of course, them being Hispanic, middle-aged, like Catholic women, stereotypically, I hate to use this kind of stuff, but they were like, no, like not in this house, not in El Rezo, like we're praying that this can't be, you know, because that would seem almost like dark energy. That would seem like a ghost presence, and anything paranormal to them is straight demonic. So it was kind of like, just put a little bit more water. Let's get a pitcher and fill the vases up. It was very ignored and shushed. So everyone kind of just sat back and was like, "Wee!" But it was definitely something that made you wonder. We live not too far from my ex-suegra's house. We drive home. It was very just intuitive feeling. We felt that something bad was going to happen. It was very cold, and when we lived in the hood, so you know, you're kind of nervous anyways get into pulling in. But we get home, we walk up the stairs, and you know, it just felt very, very, I want to say clammy as we were unlocking the door to our apartment. And we have 2 little boys that we're carrying. It's late. As soon as we open the door, every single one of my toddler's toys goes off. All of the toys go off at the same exact time. Like 3-in-1 toy, that's going off. There's like a little ball that rolls around on the floor, that's going off. There's just so many little toys going off, and they're not connected. So it definitely was paranormal. There's no other reason for that. They're motion activated, but we weren't walking that heavy up the stairs. And this has never happened before. My ex, he's just like, oh, it's just abuelito. Just abuelito, hey, like, quit fucking around kind of deal, you know? And I'm like, yeah. We go to sleep, and I think about 20 minutes after laying in bed, I get a phone call that changed my life. It was my dad's ex-girlfriend. Her name's Karen. Karen was an avid user, and she's gone. She's out of her mind, and she's yelling, saying that my dad had passed away. And I'm like, holy crap, what happened? I have so many questions, and she can only offer a few answers. She lets me know that she thought he had a heart attack and possibly like a stroke or like seizures and stuff. And I'm like, okay. So freaking out, frantic, I'm crying. I'm like on the floor. Like I let out the most blood curdling cry that came from my uterus. I never knew it was possible for me to make a sound like that. I call my brother. He already knew. He'd already been drinking. So I'm like, why didn't you guys call me? Whatever, family drama, right? I gotta drop the kids off. Like, we gotta take the kids back up to my suegra's house. We need to get to the hospital. So that's what we did. And on the way to the hospital, I call Karen again, and I'm like, so what's going on? Like, what's happening? Like, where is he? Where are they taking him? Which hospital? Like, where do I need to go exactly? Because there's a few hospitals in the area. And she's like, oh, he's fine. He's good. Don't even worry about it. And I'm like, what the fuck? Karen? What do you mean? Like, what do you mean? Like, okay, is he still going to the hospital? Like, is he that good? And she's like, no, they're still going to take him to the hospital. She tells me the hospital name. She said, but he's fine. Don't worry about it. Like, I'm just going to get some coffee and walk over to the hospital. And I'm like, okay. So I call my brother, and I'm like, yeah, so I guess he's fine. He's good now. And he's like, yeah, I'm still going to the hospital. I'm almost there. Like, I'll see you there. And I'm like, okay. My sister's coming. She lives about 2 hours away. She's on her way. Great. So we're all going to the hospital. When me and my brother get to the hospital around the same time, Karen walks in a few minutes after us. A nurse approaches us. She asks who we are. We tell her. She says, oh yeah, I'm so sorry for your loss. Like, he's here. They just brought him in on the back of the ambulance. Like, we're getting him like arranged. And I'm like, our loss? Like, I thought he was okay. She's like, yeah, he coded on the back of the ambulance. So he's gone now. And I'm like, what the fuck? So back to feeling heavy and like, like what the hell's going on? And then they tell us we can come back. My sister gets there at that point. We're waiting for way too long. But I guess, I mean, if he was already dead, right? Like, so they take us back, and the doctor stops us before we go into this little sectioned off area. He's like, so I want to let you know that he is in a lot of pain and he's really groggy. And we're like, what the fuck? How is he in pain and groggy when he's dead? What do you mean? And the doctor's like, oh, nobody told you? And we're like, told us what? And they're like, after he got here, we were able to resuscitate him. He coded, but we got him. He's good. And we're like, okay, so what the fuck? Like, what? We're like looking at each other. My brother's laughing hysterically. Like, I think there was so much back and forth, and he had been drinking heavily, so he's laughing so hard to where he's crying, and the doctor's looking at us like, what the fuck is wrong with you people? Like, what the hell? Karen, she has no shoes and socks on. Like, homegirl walked a 10-minute walk to the hospital. She's like chill, drinking coffee. It just was very strange. Even my sister and me were like, oh, what the hell? Like, I'm trying to put my big girl pants on, but I kind of want to laugh. It just was bad. It was trauma responses, all of it. It was all bad. But this is where shit starts to get paranormal. You're probably wondering, like, why, how is this ghost related, right? Like, where does the ghost stuff come in? This is where the ghost stuff comes in. We got multiple entities surrounding us. My dad tells us that he didn't want to go back. So as he's laying down, and I hated this hospital. You know, they do that ghetto shit at County Hospital. He's in the middle of a freaking hallway, right? Like, and he had a heart attack, a stroke, and a brain aneurysm. So he's in a ton of pain, and they haven't given him medicine yet. So it's just all kind of, like, I feel so bad for him. So my dad's crying to us, telling us he didn't want to go back to hell. He's like, don't take me back to hell. Like, I don't want to go back. You guys cannot let me go back. Everybody needs to ask for forgiveness and pray now, because hell is real. I think, knowing now what I know, I think he was in purgatory, kind of like in Beetlejuice, the waiting room. You know, they're all sitting there kind of waiting to be sent to where they need to go, and it's a bunch of like the wackies and, you know, the crusty people and whatever. It's kind of like where you're being judged, and I know that's where my dad went. I don't think he was in hell, but it scared him enough to make him want to change his life and do right, because it seems about accurate to me.
That was an interesting story. Definitely took forever to get to the point, honey. I'm thinking, like, you know, we got to pick our battles, but that's a story that could have been in parts, because where were you going with it?
Southern Italy sits Craco, an ancient village with a chilling history of plagues, executions, and mysterious deaths that stained its past. Now Craco stands as a ghostly monument, its crumbling walls hiding secrets that no one can explain. Would you wander through its deserted streets, knowing what might still linger in the shadows?
On April 6, 1997, the Lillelid family were passing through rural Greene County, Tennessee. They stopped at a rest stop along Interstate 81 where they encountered 6 young people from Kentucky who were on a road trip and desperate for a vehicle. One of the perpetrators was armed with a gun, forced the family into their van, and drove them out to a rural road called Payne Hollow Lane. There, the mother and father and 2 children were lined up along a ditch and were shot to death, except for the youngest son, Peter, who was only 2 years old and was left with permanent disabilities. The 6 perpetrators were later caught by a customs officer in Arizona. They were arrested and extradited back to Tennessee, where District Attorney Berkeley Bell negotiated a plea deal offering life sentences in exchange for guilty pleas to first-degree murder. All 6 defendants agreed, and in March of 1998, they were sentenced. They've since tried to appeal their convictions, but those were denied, most recently by the Tennessee Supreme Court in November of 2024. The Lillelid murders serve as a chilling reminder of the fragility of life, the depth of human cruelty, and the resilience of those who survive.
Man, that's sad. Prayers to their souls and condolences to their families. That's real sad. But you've reached the end of another video. I know this one was short, but it is what it is, baby. At least you got it, okay? Thank you for your time. I appreciate you. I appreciate your time. I do not take it for granted whatsoever. Make sure y'all get the merch it up. Let me see what you got. Tag me in your photos. Hit me up for life insurance. Make sure you like, comment, share this video and all videos, because everybody needs a piece of this joy in their life, honey. Thank you. I appreciate y'all. I love you. Ashe.